here we go. Um, I want to make sure. Yeah, that's working okay. All right, so I'm just not going to go full screen, but you don't need to see full screen because you can see the application, and this is good enough. All right, so here we go. Um, I'm Cole Peterson. Today we're going to be talking about design, infrastructure, and regulations of tiny homes on wheels, and I'm going to talk about Caravan, the tiny house hotel in particular, but also my own residential property. I talk fast, try to keep up because that's how we roll. So I run buildinganadu.com and accessorydwellings.org. If you're interested in connecting with me after the fact, that's how you do it. Go to buildinganadu.com. In terms of some of the things that I've done that relate to tiny homes on wheels, I opened up the first tiny house hotel in the world in Portland. And among other things there, it was the first legal, as far as I know, the first place where a tiny home was legally connected to a municipal sewer system, which was pretty cool. And it was the first legal place where people could stay overnight in a tiny house on wheels, with permission to do so. So that was cool. That was 2013. We opened up Caravan. And subsequently, or as a result of developing Caravan, which you can find at tinyhousehotel.com if you're interested, I developed the infrastructure or helped manage the infrastructural connections for that property. So there's 6 tiny homes on wheels, and I'll be talking about that more. And now more recently, I've moved into a house in Northeast Portland and put in infrastructure for a tiny house on wheels here in a residential application, also with permits, legally connected. Tiny house on wheels, legally connected. So I like to try. I have no problem breaking rules and regulations if and when it's called for. But I like to try to do it with permits when I can, and I have a knack for bureaucracy, having been a former federal government employee. So I'm not afraid of bureaucracy, and have been successful so far with getting some of those things done. But my main forte is really ADUs, and these are all the different things that I do with ADUs, which I talked about yesterday. If you didn't see the presentation yesterday, I'm not going to reiterate some of the things we talked about, but I do a lot of different things with ADUs, including running accessorydwellings.org and an ADU tour, and wrote a book, Backdoor Revolution, teach classes, do consultations, yada, yada. So this is Caravan, the tiny house hotel. And this is the place that my wife and I opened up. It's a nightly hotel. However, these days, as a result of coronavirus, we've kind of shifted gears and turned more into a weekly/monthly rental place for people who are unable to find proper accommodations during coronavirus. And so it's not a long-term rental, but it's kind of a mid-term rental because, frankly, almost all of our guests canceled for April and for May. And so that was like, well, we have to pivot or else we're going to be dead here for a year or however long this virus lasts. So that's what we're doing with Caravan now, but that's not what the talk is about today. I'm going to be talking about the actual tiny houses that we have. I was going to give you a virtual tour of Caravan, but we're not going to do that because of the video latency issues we're having. So instead, I'm just going to show you some pictures and talk about them. So I'm going to show you each of the tiny houses we have at Caravan and talk about just some of the unique elements that I think are notable. This is Skyline, which is 160 square feet. The notable thing about Skyline is it's 100% salvage materials. The guy who built it owns a company called Metalwood Salvage, and he does harvesting of materials that are going to go into the waste stream and turns it into beauty and art and function. And this is what he did. One notable thing about Skyline or two things I'll point out. Number one is the roof is made of an industrial refrigerator panel. So that serves as both the exterior way of keeping water out of the structure, but it's also an insulated, really well insulated panel. So that's pretty cool. It's a shed roof, notably. And then the other thing here is, unlike most tiny houses, Eric is a really crafty builder, and he built the bathroom over the trailer tongue, which I haven't really seen any other tiny houses do. So I think that's a pretty little nifty innovation there. So that trailer tongue is underneath here, but P.S. it's also a burned out travel trailer, like a there was like some explosion or something in the of some travel trailer. He converted that into a tiny house. So he's a really crafty dude, 100% salvaged. This is Caboose. Caboose is 160 square feet also. It has a curved roof, and it's pretty nifty on the inside. You see there is twin bunk beds here on the left, and then there's a ladder that comes down and you can put on the floor. It goes up to the sleeping loft, also known as a cupola sleeping loft. And so that's pretty nifty. That I don't know what else to say about this tiny house, but it's an interesting design. And because we're a hotel, we kind of prioritize the number of beds over having a big kitchen in them. This is King of Blue, which was built by a friend who lives in us or who's from Australia, and we call it King of Blue because it's got a blue pine interior, and it was built by our Australian friend. So. Thus the Kanga. But among other things, most of our tiny houses have a water heater, electric water heater. This one has a tankless, like on-demand water heater, which sounds good on its surface, but it draws like 35 amps when it's heating up water. So that's maybe one reason not to do it, but it doesn't take up much space. So that's one reason to do it. All of our tiny houses, I should mention, are connected into electric, sewer, and water. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but they all are. There's no gas, there's no propane, there's no composting toilets. These are all connected. So sorry, I'm reading the thread too about the PowerPoint, but yes, this is the best way to show the PowerPoint. So this is how we're doing it. Okay, so those of you who are lucky enough to have just seen Abel Zill's presentation, this is one of his curvilinear structures, which is really magnificent to see. And procedurally, he uses a 3D design program and then a plasma cutter to create the architectural forms for the beams on the inside of it. And then we had some nice custom stained glass windows put in. Really cool tiny house. One of the things I wanted to talk about with this tiny house, though, is not the beauty of it, but rather the fact that it is what we believe was the first ADA compliant tiny house. And it's hard to kind of capture that. But first of all, notice there's two steps here. Well, that isn't ADA compliant, but we do have a ramp underneath the tiny house that we pull out and we can put it into place so it ramps up to that door. Since we're a hotel, we wanted to try to create an accessible bedroom or accessible tiny house. So this one has a loft like most tiny houses where there's a bed, but it also has another bed down here on the lower right. And that lower right bed is totally accessible. This bathroom is a T-shaped curve, so you can do a 3-point turn with a wheelchair. And notice there's a rollout piece of furniture here. You can roll out the microwave, so you can roll underneath this countertop, which makes it ADA compliant. There's all these little things that we managed to do to meet the ADA compliance standards. So that was pretty challenging, but yeah, I'd say it was neat to be able to have that challenge, and it was only really by working with somebody who is as talented as Abel that we were able to do that. We also made it 10 feet wide. I know the standard is generally 8.5. That's what all of our tiny houses are. But in this case, we felt as though building a 10-foot wide tiny house was a suitable application because we wanted to make it as visitable as possible for people who are in wheelchairs, and 10 feet allowed us to do that. In hindsight, I would say if I was going to build a tiny house for my backyard, I might consider doing a 10-foot wide tiny house because that extra 1.5 makes a lot of difference. And guess what? It costs $25 to get that wide load permit to drive it around. So it's like once every 3 years when you're pulling your tiny house from one property to another. Maybe that extra 1.5 is worth $25. It does make it a little bit more challenging to find a trailer to that dimension, but you can custom build a trailer and make it that dimension. So something to think about. The drawback of doing a 10-foot wide tiny house is that, it's already kind of challenging to navigate a tiny house into a backyard at times because you have to get it around the corners and around the fence lines and trees and whatnot. And so 10 feet can make it a little bit challenging, but depending on where it's going, it can work just fine. This is the amazing Mysterium, also a curved roof, known as a Vardo style roof. This one is only 100 square feet, and it's kind of got cantilevered walls that splay outwards as it goes up. It's really cool. On the inside, some of the notable things about it are that it has like all of our tiny houses sleep more than two people. In this case, it sleeps four people. All of them sleep four people except for one. This bed on the bottom level here is like a jack bed, so it turns from a couch into a bed. And then this bed up here is the thing that I think will be of interest to people, which is this is a bed that's on a garage door opening spring. And so you unlatch a little hook here next to the bed, and you can literally just pull down with like 5 pounds of pressure, and that bed will drop down. And right now it's actually dropped down, but then if you want to put it back up, you can just push up with a little bit of weight, and the garage springs will help that upper bed retract about 1.5 feet up, and then it gives you a lot more space underneath this bed. So it's a kind of a nifty little thing that has some maybe some application in other tiny homes. I wouldn't be able to describe how exactly he built this thing, the builder, but just to know that it's been done is an interesting concept for people to think about. I wanted to, if I could get the videos to show, I would try, but I'm afraid they might not work, so I'm not sure what to do about that. But I'm going to talk about the infrastructure here. So we have sewer, water, and electric. I think what I'll do is actually I'm going to try to show this video, and it may or may not work, but we'll give it a go. And then if it doesn't work, then I'll just talk about it. So give me a minute here. And then I'm going to show my window, show my screen. All right. Bam, bam. Where are we? Okay. Sharing my screen, application window, Chrome tab, Caravan walkthrough. Bam. All right. So hopefully you guys are seeing this now. I think you are. It's yes. Okay, you are. All right, so it's going to be a little bit fuzzy, but I'm going to do my best here to just tell you what we're looking at. So this is an insulated water box here that's outside of each of the tiny houses. This is a hose that's running from a hose bib, a municipal hose bib. And notably, notice this little black line here. This is because we are plugging in that hose because it is a heated water hose. And so that's how we keep our hoses from freezing. If you're going to be doing a tiny house connection in a climate that freezes on occasion, make sure to have a heated hose. $75 on Amazon, no big deal. This is the electrical connection here, 50 amp electrical connection. We provide 50 amps in each of our tiny houses because we have microwaves, hot plates, water heaters, electric resistance heating systems, hair dryers because it's a hotel, and then all the other things that you would need outlets for, etc. So we provide 50 amps per tiny house. You can probably get away with 30 amps in most situations. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about the sewer. If I can find a picture of the sewer. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is the sewer coming out from the back of Pacifica. There's a vertical vent pipe here, which helps the water drain. Then that sewer connection runs down and connects into a municipal sewer connection. I know it's fuzzy. Bear with me. It's right here. And it's draining right into the municipal sewer system. We have a trench that runs out to the street and connects into the sewer main. So now I'm going to stop sharing the video and go back to the PowerPoint here. Give me 1 minute. Bam. Stop video. Do I want to stop video? Share screen. All right. So, okay. So I don't know what I hopefully you're seeing me now. Okay, so that's some of the stuff I wanted to show. Now I'm going to just go back to the PowerPoint here and show some more of the slides. Are you seeing that? Yes. Okay. Okay, so here's the 50 amp electrical connection. Here is a post that I wrote on buildinganadu.com that is about a residential. It's kind of looking at the slow, gradual, incremental regulatory shift that's allowing for tiny houses on wheels to be classified as a legal structural form of ADU in various markets around the country, and then diving into the specifics of doing so in our property where it's not legally classified as an ADU, but we basically built the infrastructure legally with permits. And this is a series of slides that shows the permits that I got for the plumbing connection and for the water connection and for the electrical connection. And that's literally all you need, other than the parking pad itself. And if you get those 3 permits legally and your city allows for it, then you have a infrastructural setup for a Insta ADU, which is really inexpensive relative to building a ADU. Okay, so an ADU might be 160, $200,000, and the infrastructure for tiny house on wheels is like $3,000. And so if you build that infrastructure, you're basically providing the infrastructure for somebody to do a plug and play mobile ADU on your property, essentially. But of course, the regulations haven't caught up with this concept yet, but in general, but that's ultimately where things will be going, I believe, because it's inevitable that things have to go that way because of the economics of housing. That I think that's going to be a shift we're going to see. So if you're interested in that concept and about the specifics of the infrastructural development of tiny homes on wheels on residential properties, go to buildinganadu.com and look for this post in the blog, The Birth and Evolution of Mobile ADUs. This is a book that I wrote that's about ADUs. The last chapter is called Accessory Dwellings and Civil Disobedience. And in that chapter, I go into tiny homes on wheels. This is not about tiny homes on wheels, this book, but the last chapter says, hey, if you live in a city that has bad ADU regulations, screw you, planning department. You can put in a tiny house on wheels. And then, Jay Schaefer, who spoke a little while ago, one of the, things that kind of prompted him to build a tiny house on wheels in the first place was the fact that his municipality wasn't letting him put in a small house on his property. So he's like, screw you, planning department, I'm going to put it on wheels. And then you can't tell me I can't build it because you can't regulate it if it's on wheels. And that's kind of like the interesting connection between ADUs and tiny homes on wheels. But now that tiny homes on wheels have become so popular over the last decade or so, some jurisdictions are starting to loosen up their regulations to allow for tiny houses to be classified as forms of ADUs in California in particular. So that's a new frontier, and I'm excited to see what becomes of that. In any event, I touch on that aspect of things in the last chapter of the book, which you can find at buildinganadu.com. And then just wanted to mention again that I have this ongoing series going on right now. It's at 11 a.m. Pacific time every weekday this coming week. It's like a interview with experts in the ADU space from across the world. This week, it's mostly people from Portland, though. So if you're interested in ADUs, this is a really good series for people who are kind of in the practitioner policymaker space. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back to the video. All right, now again, I'm going to ask people to put in the word question and then their questions, and I'm going to go back up toward the beginning and start scrolling through. So if you have a question, write the word question, colon, and then write your question. Otherwise, just write comments. That's fine. Okay, question. Could you please make the screen? I cannot make the screen full. It did not work. All right, question. Single axle. Yes, just so you know, Jody's question about single axle. We speak, because I'm focusing on infrastructure stuff here. Let me talk about that for a minute. Double axle is very common for tiny homes on wheels, and justifiably so. They're 10,000-pound rated trailers. But I'll tell you, as somebody who's moved a ton of tiny houses on small properties, or small property at Caravan and here on my own property, single axle is a heck of a lot easier in terms of navigation around spaces. So if you can get a trailer maker to do a single axle trailer and you're going to be definitely moving into small, tight spaces, which a lot of people are, if you're going to be putting the tiny house in like urban areas as opposed to country settings, single axle is definitely something to consider. We would not sell Abel's question from Lori. We're not selling any of ours. Given that you're in a city, are you on city sewer? Can you speak to the benefits of city sewer versus septic? Yeah, we're on sewer. Sewer is like, so yes, basically it's whatever system your city, your property is on. Even within a given city, you could have both sewer and septic. So a given property though is either going to be on sewer or on septic, and you have to go with whatever they have. Now, if you were going to try to create an infrastructural legal sewer connection to septic, God help you if you're doing it for tiny house on wheels. Doing it even for to a municipal sewer connection is hard enough, and you can only do that in like California, a handful of California jurisdictions where ADUs are allowed now, or tiny houses are allowed, and in Eugene and in Portland. Most jurisdictions you won't be able to do that. All right. Question: how do I get through the city of Denver to allow ADUs throughout the city? They only allow in certain zoning. Yes. Paige, good question. Denver is an extremely complicated ADU code. Only certain residential zones allow for it. I would contact a company called L&D Construction in Denver. They're kind of the best or most prolific ADU builder in Denver, really knowledgeable. They do design build. They know the codes better than most people. L&D Construction. Okay, question. What ordinance permit were you able to use to place your movable tiny house as an ADU in Portland? So this is from Latch Collective. Ooh, I'm a fan. So it's actually not classified as an ADU. Just to be clear, it's classified as a mobile dwelling, which is temporarily allowed as a result of the housing crisis. So there's a declaration made by the mayor that said, we are in a housing crisis through April of 2021. And as a result, there is a temporary relaxation of the enforcement of Title 29 of the Maintenance Code, which typically says thou shalt live in permitted residential structures on residential properties. For the time being, they said, we don't care, as long as somebody's living in a mobile dwelling, whether it be a car, vehicle, tiny house on wheels, RV, or travel trailer, we're cool with that. You can have one on a residential property during the declared housing emergency. Whereas LA's approach, as you are well aware, is formally codifying tiny houses as a form of ADU if it's built to ANSI standards, park model RV standards. And I think both approaches are good. And I don't really know which one is better, but I'm really interested to see which one has more purchase, the LA method or what's happening here in Portland, which is a lot more liberal, but not as formalized. Questions. And Latch Collective person, I'd love to connect with you sometime. When is a tiny house on wheel an ADU? Do you still keep up the trailer registration? That would be a good question for the Latch Collective. I don't think it actually matters. The only reason you need to register a mobile dwelling is if you're pulling it on public rights of way. If it's on private property, I don't think you need a license plate. So if it's going to stay somewhere indefinitely, you never need a license for it. And in theory, in practice, like tiny house on wheels don't generally actually go on the road that much. Like most of them are pulled like once every 2 or 3 years from one property to another. So what I would do is just get a temporary tag for a tiny house. I would never get a permanent license plate. But other people might have different ideas about that. Okay, so does the Caravan property have traditional RV hookup posts? Not have traditional RV hookup posts, but instead all linked together because people aren't bringing their own rigs for their stay. So we have it's a hybrid. It's definitely like built to RV park code standards, but instead of flexible piping for the sewer connection, we use ABS, which is a conventional sewer material that's used. Our hoses are, there's standard hoses, drinking water hoses, and then our electrical connections are permanent. So, but in theory, if we wanted to, we could actually legally have an RV come in and park there. Although not exactly, but yes, conceptually, yes, that could work. Okay. What permits required for a tiny home? That's a broad question. I can't answer that in a quick fashion, so I'm not going to. Procuring full structural and content insurance for tiny homes. Okay, so we got commercial liability insurance, general commercial liability insurance for a commercial operation. In general, though, for residential applications, which is like 99% of people, there's like a few companies out there that do tiny house on wheels insurance. I'm sure somebody can put in the chat box a link to one or two companies that do that. Just Google tiny house insurance and you'll find like 3 or 4 companies that do that. What is an ADU? Accessory dwelling unit. Well, you saw the other answers. Would I just ask my city what their ADU regulations are if I want to park on somebody else's property, or does it only apply in residential properties? So it depends. Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, Julie, regarding the ADU stuff, that's only in like 5 jurisdictions in the whole country, and they're all in California and Portland and Eugene. If you're not in those 5 jurisdictions in California, that wouldn't apply to you. They're not. The whole concept of tiny houses being legal to live in on residential properties is like the big thing that nobody talks about, but you can't do it. But slowly but surely, some cities are saying, okay, we'll allow it, but it's only a certain handful of cities. So don't assume that you can legally live in a tiny house on wheels on a residential property. Although we like that you do it because that helps push the ball forward from an advocacy policy perspective. Okay. As far as ADU, that means it means accessory dwelling unit. What would I go about? Who would I go to about building an ADU in Georgia? Okay, so what you want to do is type in the word ADU and then your city and your state in Google. That's it. It's really easy. And then you'll find that your city has incredibly bad ADU regulations, like 99% of the country, except for California, Oregon, and Seattle or Austin. If you're not in those jurisdictions, your ADU codes suck, and I wouldn't recommend building an ADU there. And that is why I do what I do with ADU-related policy work and advocacy, etc. I see my time is about up, but I'm going to keep going because I know my video won't get cut off, and I'll try to answer some more of the questions. So anyway, but that's how you find out what the ADU regulations are in your jurisdiction in Georgia. It's city by city. It's not statewide, generally speaking. Yes, Latch, fellow zoning nerd. Email me. I want to talk. Okay. Is the ADU on your property permitted under a temporary use permit? If so, how long is the permit valid? So Todd, this is a little bit complicated, but it's not a temporary. So the infrastructure is permanent, and I got that legally permitted as such. But the temporary relaxation of the enforcement of Title 29 of the Maintenance Code is a temporary measure in response to the declared housing emergency, which is a declaration that the mayor made that allows for the changing of enforcement policy on things like sleeping in public parks, because we have all these homeless people who are sleeping on sidewalks, and they have to change the laws around that to enable that to be something that people can do because we're in an emergency, which will let up in April of 2021. Just a joke. It's not going to let up in April 2021, but that's how the regulation is written. Okay. What zoning is needed for Caravan? Did it need a conditional use permit? Was it previously an RV or mobile home park? No, it's actually just a commercially zoned piece of property. There's a lot more to it than that, but no, you don't. There wasn't any special zoning on it. It was just commercial. Jesse, do I know about regulations in Canada? I'm on Vancouver Island, and many municipalities do not have regulations yet. Well, Vancouver, BC is the leading city in the world with ADUs. So you definitely have access to good people nearby, but Vancouver Island, different case. I don't know much about Vancouver Island. I think there's some movement going on in Victoria, but I'm not too clear on that. But yeah, Vancouver is a good resource. Okay, question. What chance do you think North Carolina will ever allow tiny houses as an ADU? I fought hard to get tiny houses as added to our town's 20 years ago, to our town's 20-year plan. Then a couple months later, they voted to throw it out. I have a great tiny house and no place to put it legally here. Hey, Tara, I think I probably read your story online, Tara. Hey, fight the good fight, but you might just drag that puppy out to California and park it somewhere out there because it isn't going to happen quickly in North Carolina, I fear. But maybe somebody from Latch Collective can help you expedite that, or other people on the call who are working on those issues. Question: in California, are there permits? I don't know what that means, so I'm going to skip. All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much for your time. Okay, cool. Good. All right. Awesome. Those are all the questions. I'm going to end it there. Thanks so much for joining us, guys, and enjoy the rest of the presentations today. Take care, everybody.